7 decades since the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, around 80 new fragments of the ancient texts have been revealed to the public.
For over 2,000 years, they rested in silence. Tucked inside desert caves, sealed in clay jars and shrouded in mystery, the Dead Sea Scrolls, filled with sacred texts and forgotten writings, have been studied and translated again and again, yet so much remains unanswered. But what if the truth wasn't in the words themselves, but in the spaces between them? Now, quantum AI is listening, and what it's uncovering isn't just history, it's a revelation waiting to be told. Buried for centuries beneath dust and time, the Dead Sea Scrolls held their secrets tight until now. With the rise of quantum AI, ancient ink begins to speak, and forgotten voices whisper through the silence. And what is uncovered isn't just astonishing, it's unsettling. This isn't archaeology, this feels like a warning. The hypothetical breakthrough. It began with a team of researchers using a next-generation quantum AI system, turning its attention to one of history's most puzzling discoveries: the Dead Sea Scrolls. These ancient fragments, hidden in desert caves near Qumran for over 2,000 years, had already been scanned, translated, and studied for decades, but something still felt incomplete. Scholars always suspected there was more to uncover, details buried in the faint smudges, tiny cracks, and faded ink that time had nearly erased. This was where quantum AI came in. It wasn't your average AI, it ran on quantum hardware, built to analyze not just one clue at a time, but millions of patterns all at once. It had been trained on a vast range of sources, from ancient Hebrew scripts to astronomical records. It could instantly cross-check a single word from the scrolls against biblical texts, Egyptian calendars, Greek writings, and historical sky charts. It didn't replace historians, however. It worked alongside them, moving with a speed and depth that no human brain could match. The first breakthrough was finding new hands in old texts. For years, scholars believed that many of the scrolls were written by a handful of scribes, maybe 10 at most. They based this on visible handwriting patterns and ink strokes, but the quantum AI saw something else. Using high-resolution scans and handwriting analysis deeper than what the human eye could see, it identified over 50 different scribes. It noticed tiny, almost invisible differences in ink pressure, spacing, and even rhythm. Using this discovery, it pieced together what had been missed for decades. These scrolls were more like a community effort, a larger movement of writers with access to information, language, and culture far wider than anyone expected. But it didn't end there. With its ability to scan multiple ink layers, quantum AI picked up traces that had been written over, scraped away, or simply faded with time. It spotted marginal notes that lined up across different fragments, and when those were stitched together digitally, they revealed entirely new passages, like pieces of a puzzle that had been scattered across dozens of caves. Some of these texts hinted at alternate versions of well-known biblical stories, while others were more obscure and were fragments of what looked like lost rituals, forgotten laws, or early interpretations of prophecies. One note, buried in layers of overlapping writing, seemed to suggest a genealogy of high priests tracing back to Jerusalem, not the desert sect known as the Essenes, who were once believed to be the authors. This changed everything, because the idea that these scrolls were tied directly to temple priests in Jerusalem rather than a fringe group in exile rewrote the narrative completely. It shifted the scrolls from being a record of separation to one of central importance, a potential inside view of mainstream religious leadership during one of the most volatile periods in ancient history. Next came the calendar. With the scroll's origins now pointing toward the heart of Jerusalem, quantum AI turned its focus to time itself, unlocking clues hidden not in words, but in the stars and calendars. Ancient Jewish texts are filled with dates of festivals, Sabbaths, and new moons, but the way those dates lined up with modern calendars has always been guesswork. Quantum AI, with its ability to simulate astronomical data across centuries, lined up lunar mentions in the scrolls with actual historical sky events and was able to pinpoint eclipses, solstices, and harvest moons that matched the ancient records. This gave scholars the ability to date the scrolls more accurately, in some cases pushing their origins earlier by almost a century. It might seem like a small shift, but in historical terms, it's huge. Dating the scrolls earlier places them in a completely different political and religious context than we once believed, opens up new questions like, were these texts written before the destruction of the Second Temple? Were they part of temple worship? Could they have been used to influence or even challenge religious authority at the time? However, quantum AI still did not end there. Unlike the other scrolls, which were written on parchment or papyrus, there was something called the copper scroll, and it was etched onto sheets of copper. Instead of theology or law, it listed treasures, locations, weights, and descriptions of gold and silver hidden across ancient Judea. Scholars have argued for decades if it was symbolic, mythical, or literal, but quantum AI wasn't interested in debating. It got to work, and using advanced decryption techniques, the AI scanned the copper surface, picking up etched markings and micro-scratches invisible to human eyes. It ran simulations, comparing the code patterns to ancient numeric systems, linguistic shifts, and regional dialects. Quietly, it began decoding, and what emerged wasn't a random list. It was a complex, layered, and consistent map with known geography from the Second Temple period. It wasn't a pirate treasure map, but a record of actual deposits, perhaps hidden by temple officials fleeing Roman invasion. The locations mentioned in the scroll lined up with archaeological digs, some already known, others previously dismissed, and one passage pointed to a sealed cave beneath what is now a dry riverbed near Jericho. Another hinted at items placed under stone pavements that were still intact in a nearby ruin. Perhaps the most surprising discovery came when the AI started aligning scribal notes across multiple scrolls. It picked up on subtle changes in wording, spacing, and phrasing. Tiny details that seemed unimportant on their own revealed consistent patterns, almost like a hidden code when analyzed across the entire collection. Together, they formed what appeared to be a second layer of meaning, possibly an encrypted message or a deliberately concealed teaching that had gone unnoticed for centuries. Some scholars now believe this may have been a method of preserving deeper ideas without risking the wrath of religious or political authorities. If that turns out to be true, the Dead Sea Scrolls weren't just records, they were resistance literature. A quiet rebellion against the erosion of spiritual and cultural identity, and it took the precision of quantum AI to uncover that silent fight. What's even more remarkable is that this could be just the beginning, because the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in fragments. Many torn, burned, or crumbled with age, and thousands of pieces still sit in boxes, untouched and unassembled. Traditional methods would have taken decades, even lifetimes, to piece them back together, but now, with quantum AI scanning billions of pattern combinations in moments, those fragments could be reconstructed in days. So, will quantum AI change history? In many ways, it already has, because it pulled new voices out of ancient pages, realigned our timelines, and connected dots no one thought to connect. The Dead Sea Scrolls, once seen as a window into one group's world, are now being recognized as part of a much bigger picture, one that spans geography, politics, and theology. With every scan, every matched fragment, every deciphered line, that picture keeps growing clearer. Maybe history was never lost after all. Maybe it was just waiting to be read in the right light. While purely speculative, this imagined breakthrough hints at what's possible when ancient mystery meets future tech, setting the stage for what quantum AI could truly become in the real world. The dawn of quantum AI, where artificial intelligence meets quantum power. Imagine a world where machines don't just think faster, but smarter, where they reason in ways that push the limits of human understanding. Now, combine that with the incredible potential of quantum computing, a technology that goes beyond number crunching and completely redefines how information is processed. This is the world of quantum AI. It's not science fiction, and it's not some distant dream being toyed with in a lab. It is real, and it is already unfolding. But if you're not paying attention, you might miss the quiet revolution taking shape behind the glass walls of companies like IBM. So, what is quantum AI really? At its core, it is the concept of running artificial intelligence algorithms on quantum computers, but not on the kind of hardware in your phone or even in the powerful servers behind your favorite apps. We're talking about machines that operate based on the rules of quantum physics, the same laws that govern particles so small you'll likely never see them. It might sound a little abstract, or even far-fetched, but here's where it gets interesting. Unlike regular computers that process one possibility at a time, quantum computers can explore many possibilities all at once. And that single difference changes everything. Think of it this way. A regular computer is like a flashlight. It points in one direction, lights up the path, one step at a time. A quantum computer, on the other hand, is more like a disco ball in a dark room. It lights up every corner, every possibility, all at once. This is the kind of power we're tapping into with quantum AI, and when you plug artificial intelligence into that level of processing, you're no longer just training machines to recognize faces or finish your sentences. You're training them to solve problems we don't even know how to ask yet. Now, let's bring this out of the clouds for a moment and land it in the real world. IBM, short for International Business Machines Corporation, is a global tech giant, known for its work in hardware, software, and consulting. In December 2023, the company unveiled its 133-qubit Heron processor, and by late 2024, they had rolled out an upgraded version called Heron R2, a 156-qubit system that showed major improvements in coherence and error reduction. This upgrade made it possible to run quantum circuits with up to 5,000 2-qubit gates more reliably than ever before. Looking ahead, IBM has set its sights on building a fault-tolerant quantum computer by 2029, a milestone that could officially open the door to large-scale quantum AI. The Heron chip isn't just a small upgrade, it is a giant leap in making quantum systems stable, something scientists have been chasing for decades because quantum computers are delicate. The tiniest vibration, even heat, can mess with their calculations, so building one that works consistently and accurately isn't just difficult. It's like trying to stack playing cards in the middle of a windstorm. But with Heron, there is a calm in the chaos, and IBM isn't stopping there. They've drawn a line in the sand and marked the year 2029 for something even bigger, a fault-tolerant quantum computer. In simple terms, it is a quantum machine that can correct its own mistakes as it goes, making it far more reliable and useful. When that happens, and all signs say it's a matter of when, not if, the doors to true quantum AI would swing wide open. Right now, the idea of running AI on quantum machines is still in the early stages and is mostly experimental, as researchers are still working to figure out how to connect complex AI models with quantum hardware in a way that actually works. Think of it like trying to teach a toddler to drive a sports car. It is not that the car isn't powerful, but it is because we haven't quite figured out how to buckle them in yet. But once that connection is made, the possibilities are incredible. We're talking about AI systems capable of analyzing massive health data sets and predicting diseases long before symptoms appear, or machines that can discover new materials for clean energy solutions in days rather than decades. This is the scale we're headed toward, and unlike traditional computers, which tend to slow down or break under too much data, Quantum systems are built to handle that complexity. In fact, they thrive in it. But here is the twist in the tale. No one fully knows what quantum AI will look like once it has matured, and this is both the risk and the excitement, because it is like standing at the base of a mountain shrouded in mist. You know the climb will be hard, and you know the peak is high, but until you get closer, you don't know what view awaits at the top. And with companies like IBM leading the way, climbing higher with each breakthrough, the summit no longer feels out of reach. Still, the road to quantum AI isn't without its bumps, as quantum computers are incredibly fragile, expensive, and need very specific conditions to run like temperatures close to absolute zero, which is actually colder than outer space. Because of that, the technology isn't something your average tech startup can just plug into and start building apps with. Not yet, anyway. But the plans are in place, the groundwork is being laid, and maybe that's what makes this moment so fascinating. We are not just seeing a new technology take shape, we're watching two of the most powerful forces in science, quantum computing and artificial intelligence, come together to form something entirely new. It's like when electricity met the internet, or when fire met the wheel. These aren't just tech upgrades. They are turning points. The kind that don't just move us forward, but they redefine what was possible. And the best part is we are all still in the first chapter. As quantum AI begins to show us what's possible, the next step is to understand where it all began. Deep in the caves, among the scrolls that started it all. Unearthing the past. Understanding the origins and significance of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It all started with a mistake, or maybe more accurately, a lucky accident. Back in 1947, a young Bedouin shepherd was wandering through the rocky cliffs near the Dead Sea, looking for a lost goat. Coincidentally, he stumbled upon a small opening in the rocks and did what curious kids tend to do: he threw a rock inside. Instead of hitting solid ground, the rock hit something that sounded like pottery shattering, so he climbed in. This was where he found a handful of old clay jars, and inside one of them was rolled up pieces of parchment wrapped in linen. He had no idea what he'd found, but what he'd stumbled upon turned out to be one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Those scrolls, the ones that broke the silence of a cave with the crack of a shattered jar, would later be known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. But what exactly are they? At the most basic level, the Dead Sea Scrolls are a massive collection of ancient Jewish texts. We're talking about over 900 manuscripts, written mostly in Hebrew, with some in Aramaic and Greek. They were found in 11 different caves near a site called Qumran, not far from the northwest shore of the Dead Sea. The scrolls date from around the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE, which means some of them are more than 2,000 years old. The Dead Sea Scrolls include a wide mix of writings from biblical texts to prayers, rules, commentaries, calendars, and even apocalyptic visions of what the writers believed was coming. While some are copies of well-known texts from the Hebrew Bible, like Psalms, Genesis, and Isaiah, others are entirely new, with no match in any known religious tradition. What makes these scrolls so important is the window they offer into Jewish life and thought during a critical moment in history. They speak to the period just before and during the life of Jesus, the Roman occupation of Judea, and the fall of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. Before the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, the oldest known Hebrew Bible manuscripts came from the medieval period over 1,000 years later. Their discovery pushed that timeline back by centuries, forcing scholars to rethink the roots of Jewish scripture and tradition. Imagine being a historian and suddenly uncovering a stack of journals, letters, and reflections from people living through a time of intense religious and political change. This is what the Dead Sea Scrolls offered: a time capsule of personal, spiritual, and communal voices once buried in desert caves. And yet, a mystery still surrounds them. Who wrote these texts, and why were they hidden away? Why do some appear burned, torn, or left unfinished? Many scholars believe the scrolls were the work of a Jewish sect known as the Essenes. They were a group that had pulled away from what they saw as a corrupt priesthood in Jerusalem and had set up a separate community in the desert. These people were obsessed with purity, structure, and prophecy. They saw themselves as the true followers of God's will and believed that they were living in the end times. If that didn't sound intense, listen to this. Their writings are full of rules about how to eat, sleep, pray, and even how to correct someone who breaks a rule. Still, not everyone agrees with the existence of the Essene, and this theory because some scholars argue the scrolls were collected from multiple sources and brought to the caves for safekeeping during times of war or unrest. Others think the Qumran site might have been something entirely different, maybe a library, a fortress, or even a pottery workshop. The truth is, nobody knows for sure, and that's part of what keeps researchers coming back. The scrolls have also opened up deeper questions about how religious texts were created and passed down. We tend to think of ancient scriptures as set in stone and unchanged over time, but the Dead Sea Scrolls tell a different story. Some biblical books appear in more than one version, with small but noticeable differences in wording or structure. This suggests that scribes weren't simply copying, they were editing, interpreting, and interacting with the text. It wasn't just about preserving a single version. It was about making sense of faith in a world that felt uncertain and changing. Moving on, there's the Copper Scroll, which stands out from the rest. Unlike the others written on parchment or papyrus, this one was engraved on sheets of copper, and instead of prayers or laws, it reads like a treasure map. It lists hidden stashes of gold, silver, and sacred objects, along with instructions for where to find them. Now, whether those treasures were ever real is still debated, but the scroll itself adds a whole new layer of mystery. Because why was it made from copper? Was it meant to last longer than the others? Or was it designed to hide something important? Something meant to stay secret until the right person or machine could unlock it. So why do the Dead Sea Scrolls matter? They matter because they changed how we understand history. They showed us that Judaism wasn't a monolithic religion at the time. It had branches, sects, disagreements, and debates. They gave context to the rise of early Christianity and challenged assumptions about how sacred texts were written, edited, and preserved. They offered proof that some biblical books we read today were already in circulation long before they were officially canonized, and maybe most importantly, they reminded us that history is often found in the quietest places. Even now, decades after their discovery, the scrolls are still being studied, reassembled, and reinterpreted. The Dead Sea Scrolls are more than old parchment. They're voices from the past, whispering across time, reminding us that history isn't set in stone. It's always being rewritten, one discovery at a time. What if the scrolls we thought we understood were only part of the story? With quantum AI now in the mix, the past isn't just uncovered, it's being rewritten before our eyes. A hidden chapter rewritten, how quantum AI reshaped the scrolls and the stories they tell. In a quiet lab, while most of the world slept, a quantum AI sifted through digital scans of ancient scraps that had long been collecting dust. These weren't new discoveries, they had been studied, cataloged, and mostly dismissed. Torn bits of parchment, too damaged to decode, too scattered to matter. But on this night, something shifted. The AI wasn't guessing, it was calculating, finding shapes in chaos and linking marks no human eye had ever connected. And then, it saw something, a pattern. What the AI uncovered became known as the 11th scroll, but it wasn't a scroll in the traditional sense, at least not yet. It was a digital reconstruction, pieced together from hundreds of tiny fragments that had been overlooked for decades. Using its ability to run billions of combinations in seconds, the AI matched handwriting styles, ink formulas, and even parchment fibers, and slowly, a new text began to take shape. It wasn't like anything scholars had seen before. At first, the language felt familiar, like they were references to the wilderness, divine messengers, and exile. But the tone, structure, and point of view were different. It read like an alternate version of a well-known Old Testament story. Only this time, the perspective had shifted, and the central voice wasn't a major biblical figure, but someone on the margins, a witness, and what they described added details that reframed the entire narrative. As scholars cautiously translated the reconstructed scroll, they realized they weren't reading a copy of existing scripture. They were reading something else entirely, a text from a sectarian branch of early Judaism, possibly Essene, possibly something even earlier, and it told a story that included names and locations not found in any version of the Bible we have. But tucked into the later lines of the scroll was a passage that described a servant priest, a leader referred to as the Anointed One of the Shattered Temple. This name had appeared before, briefly and cryptically, in other Dead Sea Scrolls, but this was the first time it was connected to specific events such as dates, places, and battles. The text described a violent takeover of Jerusalem, foreign banners raised over the temple, and a hidden refuge in the desert. The AI cross-referenced the scroll's calendar terms with known Roman events such as the Siege of Jerusalem, the fall of the Second Temple, and the dates all matched. The Anointed One wasn't a mystical figure or an abstract symbol. It was a real person, hidden behind layers of metaphor, now possibly identifiable through historical records. The scroll even included a name, a Hebrew form that could be traced to a priestly line in the records of Jerusalem's Second Temple period. While all these weren't definitive proof, at least not yet, scholars were cautious. Every step, each ink match, parchment thread, and date alignment had to be verified by human experts, but if it held up, this scroll didn't just provide a new account of a sacred story. It connected the beliefs of the Qumran community directly to real people and events, turning speculation into something far more concrete. And it didn't stop there. The same AI that rebuilt the 11th scroll also returned to the Copper Scroll, the most mysterious document of them all. Quantum AI brought something new to the table. It didn't just translate the text, it modeled the terrain based on elevation data, ancient trade routes, and changes in landscape over centuries. It even factored in travel times, common hiding methods, and local temple practices. The AI ran simulations, cross-referenced the names mentioned in the scroll with ancient administrative maps and historical records, and eventually identified a specific set of geographic coordinates. One was a dry riverbed near Jericho. Another was a cave buried under a collapsed cliff face not far from Qumran. Both were places where earlier teams had searched, but not deeply. Or with today's tools so armed with new information, archaeologists returned with ground-penetrating radar, and careful excavation revealed something buried beneath layers of sand and stone. A chamber. Inside were small broken jars, metal shards, ash, and possibly the remnants of a hidden store, hastily buried and never recovered. Whether they had found one of the Copper Scroll's lost treasures or something entirely unrelated remained to be seen, but one thing was clear. Quantum AI had changed the search, and it had turned what once felt like guessing into something closer to guided discovery. If the scrolls really had been part of a Jerusalem temple library, not the isolated desert writings of a fringe group, that changed everything. It shifted the narrative away from a group of exiles copying sacred texts in isolation to a coordinated effort to preserve key religious knowledge during times of chaos. It suggested the scrolls were not separate from the temple, but were a part of it smuggled out as Roman forces advanced. hidden away in caves, as a last act of preservation. And if one of those texts contained a messianic prophecy tied to real people and events? If it connected beliefs once thought to be marginal directly to the heart of Jewish history, this would mean centuries of biblical scholarship would need to be revisited. It would reshape how we understand the origins of Judaism, the roots of Christianity, and the political and spiritual tensions of the era. Again, all of this remains speculative, as none of these breakthroughs have officially been confirmed. Regardless, every step, from AI modeling to human verification, requires patience and skepticism, because history isn't rewritten in a day. It's built layer by layer with caution and care. Still, the possibility alone is powerful. For now, the fragments are still being tested. Teams of experts are working to verify translations, date fibers, and match handwriting styles. The finds are real, the texts are being reconstructed, and the coordinates have been logged. What comes next depends on what more they find and how well the AI's predictions hold up under scrutiny. However, one thing is certain. We've entered a new phase in understanding the ancient world, and it is not through digging alone, but by combining digital precision with old scrolls and even older questions. History may not be finished with us yet. It may still be speaking, faintly, through parchment, copper, and time waiting for someone or something to finally listen. So if quantum AI can uncover hidden scribes, decode ancient calendars, and possibly reveal a buried history of resistance and prophecy, what else might be hidden? Could the stories we've accepted for centuries be only the surface, with deeper truths encoded beneath, waiting for the right mind or machine to uncover them? Are we witnessing a true historical awakening, or simply reshaping the past through modern eyes? And if these discoveries continue, how might they reshape our understanding of faith, power, and the origins of the texts that shaped our world? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you enjoyed this video, click on the next video on your screen.